The story begins with a young man having a vivid nightmare, where he recalls collapsing on his 5th birthday, and the scene then shifts to an older, bloodied man collapsing, suggesting a traumatic past event while the young man from the nightmare stands determinedly, surrounded by several women. As the dream continues, this young man is depicted in a fierce battle with these women, their swords clashing above him, leading to a close-up of his hand, stained with blood, indicating a violent end. He then realizes that this violent scene is from the world of a game he knows very well, and during this nightmare, he remembers that he is Luke, the villain who tragically dies in that very scene. Waking up terrified and sweating in his bed, the young Luke, still a small child, grapples with the realization that he is the despised antagonist from the game. He remembers that the game's protagonist, the Sword Emperor, is destined to become the strongest swordsman, currently enjoying his life at the academy, and his journey involves falling in love and training with his companions to grow stronger before finally defeating the evil Duke's family, who plot a coup d'état. Luke, identified as the second son of this Duke, was known in the game by a terrible nickname, the Gross, Fat, Toad, given to him by people who mocked his awful appearance and personality because he manipulated the protagonist and his allies like a tyrant, hiding behind his family's authority, which Luke himself could not handle. He then recalls the tragic backstory provided for his horrible personality, explaining that his mother died immediately after his birth, and no one in his family cared about him, leading him to neglect his training, develop an inferiority complex, and commit evil deeds to gain his family's recognition. Despite possessing a talent for magic since birth, it never amounted to anything, and he ultimately became a sacrificial pawn for the Duke, serving no purpose beyond being killed in the game. Confronted with the grim reality of his future, Luke, who is currently a child, questions if he will truly turn out like the gross, fat Toad in 10 years, the age he and the protagonist are supposed to be when the game starts. He desperately does not want to die and resolves that if he can prevent himself from becoming that terrible person and avoid evil deeds, he might be able to alter his future, especially since he has memories from his previous life and therefore does not need this family's love or approval. Initially, Luke optimistically thinks that as a noble he would not have to worry about earning a living and could live a peaceful, happy life, but then he quickly remembers his family's evil nature and how they are destined for a purge, meaning he would not be able to escape their fate unless he gains enough power to defend himself. He then recalls that, according to the game, Luke supposedly had a talent for magic. Curious, he wonders how to use magic without a user interface, trying to feel for mana and asking if the airy, soul-like energy he perceives is indeed mana. He attempts to cast a spell by saying, heal, then repeats it like a chant, and he feels a little better, though he has no health bar to confirm its effect. He continues to practice, chanting heal, repeatedly, until he eventually loses consciousness. The next morning, his exclusive maid, Syrup, a dog beast man who is 12 years old, wakes him up, asking how he feels. Luke feels sluggish but no longer ill, realizing he might have run out of mana, guessing he has enough for about 10 heals. He concludes that he needs to study magic to understand it better, lamenting that he ideally would want a tutor, but knows his father would never get him one, leaving him no option but self-study. When Luke asks Syrup to read a difficult book titled Magic Fundamentals to him, she initially suggests a picture book, but Luke insists he wants to learn magic, and Syrup, touched by his earnest request, agrees to teach him reading and math as well, declaring he can count on her. Syrup then cheerfully suggests they start training, citing how dog beastmen enjoy exercise, but Luke, despite his maid's enthusiasm, politely declines. Thus, Syrup begins teaching Luke, reading the difficult magic book aloud, marveling at his ability to understand such long and complex words. Luke affirms he is doing fine, and Syrup wonders if she is truly useful in helping him. Luke eventually understands that mana is a transparent energy floating in the air, and its amount and the power of spells depend on one's talent, confirming his own magical aptitude. He realizes he could use heal by simply imagining mana healing him, as casting a spell involves imagining it and letting mana flow to where one desires. He learns that magic is broadly divided into attribute-less magic, which is basic and transformable, and attribute magic, which most nobles can use but requires special talent. He ponders if he, too, will be able to use attribute magic given his family's excellent lineage. As time passes, Syrup diligently tends to Luke, making his bed and tucking him in, promising to keep him safe. 1 year later, Luke reflects on his initial struggles with mana practice, often fainting from exhaustion, but he notes that his total mana capacity has now increased through daily practice of using it all up. He dedicates himself to studying and learning to read, constantly devising ways to avoid his preordained fate as the gross, fat toad. Yet he still bemoans the lack of a magic tutor in their small annex. Observing his game appearance, Luke realizes the extent of his future health issues, including acne, blemishes, warts, cracked skin, and obesity, and prioritizes taking care of his health, starting with washing his face. He is amazed that people in this world do not bathe or wash their faces daily, finding the bubbles clinging to his hand miraculous. Syrup, surprised by Luke's claim of having delicate skin, agrees to learn his new skincare routine, and they begin a regimen of twice-daily skincare, using soap, face lotion, body lotion, moisturizer, and sunscreen, as Luke dreams of being rich enough to afford high-class products. As Luke continues his health journey, Syrup helps him bathe, assuring him that his skin will be completely smooth in a year if he keeps up the routine, and he will grow up to be beautiful. Luke, however, finds it hard to get used to the unique bathing practices of this world. Now looking much healthier, Luke reflects on how he used to feel awful after eating, which led him to change his diet early on by cooking dishes from his previous world, realizing that the food in this world might not have agreed with him, and his health improved significantly once he started cooking for himself. He also established a new daily routine, waking up early and getting some sun in the forest near the annex, having stopped sleeping late every morning. He also began taking walks and doing light exercise, with Syrup encouraging his newfound outdoor activity. Despite Syrup's continued suggestions to start more rigorous training, Luke firmly declines, stating he genuinely dislikes exercising and prefers to move as little as possible, even though he desires a healthy and easygoing life. Syrup warns him that he will become terrible if he only eats and sleeps, but Luke, looking at the picture of his future self as the gross, fat toad, believes he has great potential and wishes to grow up handsome, finding it hard to imagine transforming into that unsightly figure. While bathing, Luke reflects that living an easygoing life would also leave him with an abundance of free time, and he muses that endless leisure, like going to amusement parks or casinos daily, would quickly become boring, as leisure is only enjoyable if it is not constant. He also understands that despite being born a noble, he has no safety net, as his father's treatment suggests he will be sacrificed and left for dead sooner or later, unlike the game's Luke, who misused his privileged upbringing and brought about his own ruin. Luke then considers his future, including his plan to have a wife support him and the need to find a source of income to live worry-free, even if he cannot marry, while aiming to avoid unnecessary hardships given his privileged childhood. He notes that the game is split into two major arcs, the war arc focused on resolving villain-caused incidents and the academy arc focused on romance and character training, and he knows mastering both is his ticket to getting ahead in life. He also realizes that not attending Alessida's Royal Academy would drastically increase his odds of survival, as the game's Luke primarily appears in the Academy arc. However, despite the increased survival odds, Luke has a compelling reason to attend. It is where he will find all the beloved characters from the game, and he wholeheartedly loves them. Ultimately, Luke declares his desire to be a happy slacker and enjoy this world as his new self, Luke. When Syrup persists in suggesting swordsmanship training to help him protect himself, Luke, guessing her love for swordsmanship, asks if he really needs to learn it when he has her to fight for him. Syrup, after a moment of surprise, agrees, and Luke tells her he will leave the sword fighting to her. The next morning, despite consistently refusing Syrup's offers for exercise, Luke acknowledges that some movement is necessary to stay healthy, leading him to invent a new spell. This spell manifests as a blob-like creature named Val, an original attribute-less magic creation designed to work while Luke sleeps. He explains that all attribute-less magic relies on transforming mana and demonstrates Val's ease of use by having it fetch water for him. The true test comes when he orders Val to envelop his body while he sleeps and perform exercises, thus allowing Luke to train while remaining completely easygoing. Syrup is astonished, thinking this makes exercise a piece of cake for him, and Luke, now awake, agrees, marveling at Val's ability to move independently. Luke is content, realizing he can now train effectively while maintaining his easygoing lifestyle. Although he experiences muscle aches the next day, everything is progressing well, and even as a growing child who has just exercised, he finds himself constantly hungry, always with much more to do. As Syrup presents him with a dessert, Luke enjoys it, concluding that his ultimate goal is simply to live the life of a lazy, villainous noble, acknowledging that too much moderation is also a bad thing. 5 years later, Luke, now 11 years old, is engrossed in a book while Syrup, now 17, stands beside him. Luke, still reading, senses Syrup's discomfort and asks what is wrong. Syrup is amazed that Luke is floating and questions how he is doing it. Luke realizes that using mana to carry himself is no different from carrying a glass, but he decides it would be too much trouble to explain his magic to Syrup, given her poor understanding of it. He offers Syrup a ride, and she eagerly accepts, feeling incredibly comfortable as he uses his mana to support her, reassuring her that there is no need to be scared. Syrup marvels at how comfortable Luke's magic feels, prompting her to ask another question about his well-trained body, as she has only ever seen him take walks and is confused by his physical condition given that he is always either reading or sleeping. Luke explains that he absorbs Val, his self-sufficient magic, into his body and transfers memories directly from his brain to it. He then reveals a new spell he invented called Trace, which allows Val to perfectly recreate and mimic movements from his favorite fighting games, Martial Arts Masters, and Manga, even though Luke himself has forgotten the exact motions. All this knowledge of fighting styles and their histories has now combined into his own personal fighting style, which Luke demonstrates with a series of powerful martial arts movements, leaving Syrup utterly amazed, exclaiming that his movements were like those of a master. Not even martial artists could move like that. Luke feels no fatigue, noting that he is not even conscious of his movements, yet he can still train his body to grow stronger and gain muscle memory, finding this entire process quite convenient. Syrup, deeply impressed, declares him a genius, but Luke humbly dismisses the compliment, recognizing that she does not fully grasp the mysterious abyss of magic. Later, feeling tired from his workout, Luke asks Syrup to prepare a change of clothes, while he decides to take a short bath in a spring in the forest, the closest water source available, and Syrup agrees to join him. He muses that his knowledge of magic, acquired from his previous life, is so profound that even he does not fully understand how it works. While at the spring, Luke recalls how the maids often comment on how beautiful Syrup has become. He observes that Syrup has diligently continued her beauty regimen, which he taught her 5 years ago, making her even more beautiful, and she has also kept up her swordsmanship training, sharpening her fierce demeanor. Luke privately muses that seeing Syrup's cute, affectionate side is his special privilege, as she behaves like a loyal dog, overjoyed just by him speaking her name. Luke then gives Syrup a new task. He wants his magic attribute determined and instructs her to tell his father. He explains that attribute magic, which allows users to harness a born-with attribute, is locally known as the power determined by God. Luke notes that some people do not have attributes, but he is not worried as it is a noble privilege for the Ministry of Magic of Elesidas, where the greatest sorcerers gather, to appraise one's attribute. He is eager to discover his attribute. The next day, Malsa Glicko, the chief of the Ministry of Magic's Attribute Bureau, arrives to conduct the appraisal. Malsa, mistaking Luke for a young lady due to his refined appearance, expresses surprise at Luke's splendid memory for remembering his full title after hearing it only once. Luke, having anticipated Malsa's reaction, thought he would scold Syrup, but instead, Malsa praises her, to Luke's surprise. Malsa asks for the young master of the Disgusto's family, and Luke then introduces himself as Luke Hugelo Disgusto-sama, noting Malsa's initial rudeness. Luke reflects on the state church's doctrine of civil man supremacy, which scorns anyone not a civilian, including demi-humans, beast men, spirit races, and demons. Luke, however, assumes Malsa is not a bad person now. He extends his hand, introducing himself as Luke, and asks Malsa to simply call him by his first name, which Malsa reciprocates, shaking his hand. Malsa asks Luke to close his eyes and proceeds to check his magic attribute, and Luke, feeling a touch of nervousness, complies. Malsa announces Luke's attributes as sleep and sloth, which Luke immediately understands, feeling as though he has realized something he always knew, finding it amazing. Malsa explains that both attributes are classified as rare magic, unique among attribute magic, and that while all attribute magic is usually public, rare magic is kept secret. He also states that Luke's attribute will be recorded as magic that influences the human body, and asks if that is fine. Luke agrees. Malsa further explains that while everyone has certain spells they are more suited for, regardless of attribute, abilities can be improved by researching one's attributes, which Luke already understands, as simple ways of using his attributes are already coming to mind. Malsa confirms that researching is the only way to master magic, and Luke states he will keep that in mind as he begins training. Malsa is surprised by Luke's understanding and asks how he knows about appraisal magic, a secret only known to a select few. Luke, realizing he let a secret slip, quickly replies that as a reincarnator, he simply figured it was a common thing, asking if it was not obvious from the appraisal itself. Malsa, flustered, apologizes and asks Syrup to bring tea. During tea time, Luke offers Malsa some of his homemade herbal tea, which he grew himself, explaining it is good for the body and clears the mind, personally recommending it. Malsa compliments the tea and asks its name, and Luke says he does not mind sharing some tea leaves if Malsa likes it. Malsa then asks if the matter of appraisal magic should be kept secret, and Luke confirms it. Malsa further asks about the flying cushion spell he saw earlier, impressed by its unique nature, but Luke calmly brushes it off as nothing special. Later, Luke asks Malsa if he would be his tutor, as he appreciates the valuable time Malsa has given him. Malsa says he personally does not think Luke needs a tutor, asking what exactly he hopes to learn. Luke clarifies that he simply wants to be pen pals, asking Malsa to answer any letters he sends with questions about magic he does not understand. Malsa finds this interesting and happily agrees to correspond with him. Thanks to Malsa, Luke gains extensive knowledge about magic and now has a personal tutor. He learns that unlike attribute-less magic, where mana can be freely transformed, attribute magic follows specific rules depending on the attribute. This appraisal made him realize his inherent magic, which are the basic spells of an attribute. For example, the fire attribute has pilot light to produce a flame, fireball to tighten and solidify mana, and fire arrow to fire solidified mana, with the rest depending on one's knowledge and practice. Luke also learns that his sleep attribute has 3 inherent spells. Sleep, which can put a target to sleep with varying effects based on mana injection and target resistance. Sleep timer, which defines the sleep period through touch, and sleep delete, which forcefully dispels any sleep magic. He realizes that if people do not know about his attributes, he can put them to sleep before they even understand what is happening, especially if he combines sleep with his sloth attribute, which would completely disorient them. However, he also knows that magic can be defended against through magic resistance and defensive magic. Luke then thinks about the possibilities, such as a sleep arrow for long-distance sleeping, marveling at how amazing and almost cheating his attributes are. He imagines putting teachers to sleep to skip class and realizes there is an endless variety of spells to experiment with, so much so that no amount of time would be enough to test them all out. Luke begins his day by routinely giving Val, his unique magical creation, control over his body for exercise, an activity that clears his mind and allows him to focus on magical experimentation, and then he goes to eat breakfast, prompting Syrup to ask if he would like a meal. He enthusiastically agrees, but although Syrup is exceptionally skilled at all maid duties and her meals are perfectly edible, Luke feels they truly lack attention to detail, contrasting them with the dishes he still prefers to cook for himself, using memories from his past life, a task he and Syrup now take turns doing. Now 11 years old, Luke notices his worries growing over the years as he washes off sweat while Syrup cooks, and he decides to postpone addressing them for later. Later, near a natural hot spring that serves as the closest water source, Luke, while bathing, hears voices nearby, indicating that he is not alone. A young girl, distressed and seemingly on the brink of death, cries out that she is about to die all alone, a thought that immediately registers with Luke, who realizes that this secluded spot is usually empty and questions if the girl is merely a lost child, asking her who she is. Suddenly, a monstrous, shadowy hand grabs the girl, startling Luke as he realizes there are other people present. The girl, revealed to be a guest at one of Luke's older sister Iris's tea parties, becomes highly embarrassed upon seeing Luke unclothed, blushing intensely as Luke recognizes her as someone his sister had invited to expand her social clique, though he had completely forgotten about the event that day. Luke then introduces himself as Luke Hugelo Descustos, and the girl, recognizing his relation to Iris, formally introduces herself as Karen C. Caribbean, the daughter of Count Caribbean, to which Luke, finding her formal demeanor amusing in their current state, calls her Karen Wanison. Luke then discovers that Karen can use attribute magic and asks her to demonstrate it, which she excitedly agrees to do, revealing her love for magic. Before she can show her magic, Luke notices that Karen is still unclothed and politely asks her to put on some clothes first, suggesting he will show his magic shortly afterward, although he is quite curious about her unique ability. Karen, now dressed, performs her attribute magic, summoning a large magic pouch that can store an enormous amount of things, astonishing Luke. Karen then demonstrates her cooking magic, rapidly chopping vegetables and stirring a pot, quickly producing a delicious-looking spiced moon rabbit soup, which she presents to Luke as something made simply from ingredients she had on hand. As Luke tastes the soup, its aroma alone is enticing, and he exclaims that it is crazy delicious, stating he has never tasted anything so good, not even in his past life, much to Karen's surprise. He then realizes that not only does the soup taste amazing, but it also provides a buff, making him feel power welling up inside him. This revelation instantly makes Luke recognize Karen as an invaluable asset for the slothful life he desires, as she is a young noble lady capable of cooking buffing dishes, a trait he will not let slip away. He immediately asks Karen if she would cook this soup for him every day when they grow up. Without hesitation, Luke then boldly proposes marriage to Karen, stating he will happily marry into her family, rationalizing that she would support him even if his own Disgusto's family eventually gets crushed, and more importantly, he needs her incredibly tasty cooking. Karen is utterly shocked by his sudden proposal, making that day a truly miraculous encounter for Luke. To make the proposal official, Luke immediately contacts his father, who indifferently tells him to do as you like. Everything proceeds swiftly, and soon arrangements are made for the families to meet at Count Caribbean's restaurant. At the restaurant, Luke meets Count Caribbean, noting his father's absence from such an important marriage meeting. Count Caribbean, however, assures him it is no issue, explaining that Luke's father merely stopped by, said hello, and left, which Luke says he does not mind, suspecting that his father's intimidating demeanor might have been too much for Karen. Luke, being the second son, clarifies that he has only himself to offer and asks if marrying into the Caribbean family would be acceptable. Count Caribbean, with a broad smile, enthusiastically declares that his family would gladly welcome Luke, adding that Karen has already confessed her love for him, much to Karen's mortification. Luke reflects on his decision, acknowledging that he heard Karen was the one who confessed and that some girls mock her appearance, but he finds her round face rather cute. He also notes that his sister, Iris, treats everyone except her favorite pretty girls very harshly, and she is the one who would talk about Karen's appearance. Luke reiterates that what truly drew him to Karen was her cooking and status, not just her personality, and he is grateful that Karen chose him for his inner beauty. Count Caribbean proudly explains that his family, initially fishermen and traders, now handles a wide array of maritime businesses. He observes Luke's sun sensitivity and asks if he will be okay, as everyone in their family, including himself, frequently goes to sea. Luke reassures him that his countermeasures against the sun are perfect, stating he is sturdier than he looks due to his training, and envisions the convenience of having Val to carry his luggage on ships, allowing him to simply sleep during voyages. Count Caribbean entrusts his daughter to Luke, wishing them well as he departs. Later, Karen expresses her desire to become beautiful enough to stand by Luke's side, explaining that she overheard him caring about his appearance and health since he was little. Luke confirms this, acknowledging that she is already quite cute for a boy, but insists that she is very pretty. Karen asks if Luke can help her grow beautiful, to which he replies that he can, using a very easy method. Luke proposes combining his sleep attribute with Val to make her fall asleep while Val enters her body and performs a set of movements, allowing her to diet easily. He emphasizes that getting thin is not her only goal, and he explains his method to Karen in a private room, stating that his attributes are sleep and sloth, which allow for exercising while sleeping. Luke first demonstrates on himself, setting a 1-minute sleep timer for Val to perform a light workout, and after waking, Karen is amazed, exclaiming that he moved like a martial artist, and Luke confirms he has no memory of the workout. He assures her that all she needs to do is let Val enter her body, and despite Karen admitting she is bad at exercising, she eagerly agrees to try. 1 hour later, after a light exercise session, Karen is completely exhausted, realizing she might be strong but is terrible at exercise. Luke then advises her to stick to basic exercises to build stamina, offering healing magic for her muscle pain, and then guides her through his beauty regimen, starting with meticulously foaming up soap to gently wash her face, explaining that the soap will absorb dirt. Karen, brimming with curiosity and quick to learn, diligently follows Luke's beauty regimen, which includes proper rinsing, then moves on to makeup, and finally, nutrition. Luke highlights the importance of proper nutrients for building a beautiful body and praises Karen's cooking skills, suggesting she can make delicious diet food with the right ingredients. From then on, Karen becomes completely addicted to developing new diet dishes based on Luke's ideas and Japanese cuisine, such as miso soup and natto hamburger, instantly turning them into reality, though Luke occasionally finds she makes too much food. Luke suggests donating the excess food to an orphanage, as it's not healthy to overeat, even healthy food. Karen, delighted by the idea of researching cooking while also helping others, finds the plan perfect and readily agrees to distribute the dishes to different orphanages every day. However, Luke is bothered by the unhygienic conditions of these orphanages and the fact that many orphans cannot use magic to clean themselves. One day, Karen frantically seeks Luke's help for a child who has collapsed, as the church-managed orphanage provides no assistance or healing magic, and Luke observes the child's shallow breathing, suspecting pneumonia. Luke, despite his dislike for the church, agrees to check on the child, stating he will use his healing magic as practice and does not require payment, being the son of a duke. Karen is incredibly grateful, and Syrup, witnessing the duke's vast and used wealth, suggests using some of it to improve the orphanage. Luke, finding the idea of thinking a hassle, agrees to donate 50 gold, realizing that the orphanages provide him with many opportunities to test out his healing magic on various ailments like poison, illness, monsters, and wounds, finding the experience quite interesting. Luke is now 14 years old, reflecting on the last 3 years of his life. He has enjoyed this time since becoming engaged to Karen, and his ideal slothful life has been steadily improving. His maid Syrup takes care of most of his needs, while Karen cooks for him every day, and he has continued using his magical creation vow to maintain his health and appearance. Luke has also experienced many new things thanks to Karen, but he knows these peaceful days are ending soon because she will be attending the academy this spring and living in the dormitories there. He wants to spend as much of their remaining time together as possible, and when he realizes she is late for their meeting, he has an idea why and decides to go look for her himself. As Luke walks toward the main house, he passes his 19-year-old older brother, Testa Hugelo Desgustos. Luke notes that he is now taller than Testa, but his brother ignores him completely as he always does, a fact that doesn't seem to bother Luke at all. Brushing the encounter aside, Luke continues on his way to find Karen, certain that she will be there. He soon finds her and sees that her diet has been a great success, transforming her into a highly regarded beauty praised for both her looks and her femininity. He finds her at a tea party hosted by his older sister, Iris Hugelo Desgustos. Luke approaches the table and asks Iris if he can borrow Karen for a moment, but Iris is not pleased, asking if he intends to break up her party since Karen came to see her. Luke internally reflects on his sister's strange charm, which seems to make all men who meet her eyes want to become her playthings, but he notes that this power doesn't work on him at all and that he finds Karen to be much more attractive. He tells his sister not to be unfair, explaining that since he won't be going to the academy until next year, she will have plenty of time to talk with Karen there, and asks her to leave them alone for now. Karen becomes flustered but is secretly delighted, thinking to herself that two beauties are fighting over her. Luke observes Iris sulking stubbornly and tells her that she is ruining her beautiful face with such a scary expression. To smooth things over, he then flatters his sister, telling her she is the only person whose beauty can match his own and says he wants her, which seems to appease her. Having earned some points with his sister, he quickly takes Karen and leaves. A few months later, after Karen has departed for the academy, Luke decides on a rare outing with Syrup. Syrup remarks on how unusual this is, joking that it might start raining. Luke reflects that he rarely goes outside since merchants usually just come to him, and he doesn't have any friends to visit besides his pen pal, Malsan. He tells Syrup to come with him anyway, and she agrees. Syrup, who is skilled at driving the coach, wears a cloak to hide her ears and tail as they travel. Luke misses Karen already, remembering how she would take them to all sorts of places. They soon arrive at their destination, the Great Mado Shop, which is a very large department store that also appeared in the game Luke remembers. The store sells everything from items and equipment to presents for love interests. Inside, they are greeted and led to a VIP room, where the owner, Morsky Mado, is waiting. Morsky recognizes Luke as the son of Duke Desgustos and introduces his 14-year-old daughter, Akari Mado. Luke immediately identifies Akari as one of the main love interests from the game's merchant storyline and is happy he gets to see her before starting at the academy. He is also glad to see Akari being polite to Syrup, who is a beastman. Akari asks what they are looking for, and Luke requests that she show him her recommendations for his beauty regimen or anything else that is convenient. Akari smiles and happily agrees, starting by showing them a magic hair dryer while making light and witty conversation. After buying almost everything that was shown to them, Luke asks Syrup if there is anything she wants. Syrup replies that since they almost never go shopping together, she would like a present. Akari presents a beautiful red choker, and Syrup is immediately taken with it. Although Syrup protests that she is just a servant, Luke decides to buy it for her, telling her to take it as thanks for always taking care of him. He gives her the gift and she puts it on. Both Akari and Luke agree that the choker suits her very well and emphasizes her beautiful white hair. Luke is simply glad that Syrup likes her present. As they leave the store, Akari wishes them continued patronage, and Luke thinks to himself that doing things like this once in a while is not a bad idea. He decides that before he leaves for the academy next year, he needs to experience the world a bit more. More importantly, he resolves that he must also face the reason why his game character originally became the gross, fat toad before leaving home, a task he finds to be a pain but knows he must do. Luke begins to deeply question the origins of his original self's unsightly face and figure. He finds it hard to believe that his character, who started off so well put together, could change so drastically. He wonders if a simple hedonistic lifestyle was truly all it took to cause such a transformation. Having already looked into possibilities like allergies or a weak constitution without finding any answers, he also considered that the food of this world might not have been suitable for his body, but the ingredients seemed to be the same. Thinking about food preparation and ingredients leads him to believe that his fiancée, Karen, might have more insight. He seeks testimony from Karen, who nervously reviews a list of properties he described. She concludes that the ingredients with such properties are almost exclusively toxins, which can be used as medicine but can also alter the body or even be lethal if used incorrectly. This revelation convinces Luke that the bizarre change in his appearance could be explained by poisoning, and he feels it is worth investigating further. He then asks Syrup for her testimony about his childhood. Syrup recalls that until he was 4, he was a very cute child who ate and slept a lot. She never noticed anything physically wrong with him, aside from when he once mentioned having delicate skin. Syrup continues her story, remembering how Luke suddenly collapsed during his birthday dinner, which sent all the maids into a frenzy. She explains that for about a year after that incident, his condition was unstable, and Luke connects this to the time he frequently ran out of mana and fainted. His condition only started to get better when he turned 6. Luke then asks who prepared his meals back then. Syrup tells him that while they had a chef, the chef was forced to retire immediately after that fateful dinner, and the head steward took over the cooking. From that point on, as all the pieces come together, Luke realizes it must have been the head steward who was putting poison in his meals. With the answer now clear in his mind, Luke goes to confront the steward. He thanks the man for making his food every day but adds that the meals unfortunately never seemed to agree with him. Luke explains that he had been thinking about why his original self became known as the gross, fat toad, concluding that it couldn't have happened naturally and that someone must have been poisoning him. Luke uses his magic to intimidate the terrified steward and directly asks if he was the one poisoning the food. The steward immediately admits it, confessing that he was assigned the task by the head of the family, Luke's own father. As the steward begs for forgiveness, Luke is surprised by the quick confession. He figures that no one cared enough to do the dirty work themselves and that they must not have known he could use healing magic to neutralize the poison the entire time. He imagines it must have been rough for them when he refused to die and only became healthier. Luke finds the steward's response boring, thinking he would have been more eager for revenge if the man had put up a fight. He decides to forgive him, but only after a small punishment. He assures the steward he won't kill him but will instead use him as a test subject for his magic. Luke then casts his sloth magic on the steward, observing with curiosity what happens when the spell is used on a person. After the spell is cast, Luke tells the now subdued steward that he can get back to work. It is now perfectly clear to Luke that his true enemy is Duke Disgustos. When he returns to his room, Syrup asks where he went. Luke considers that his father probably wouldn't care if he fired the steward, and doing so would only provoke his father's hostility. He decides against killing his father's pawns and instead plans to simply incapacitate them, rendering them powerless but alive. Later, Luke asks Syrup if she would be happy if he decided to go to the academy. She says she had assumed he was going and would be happy to stay by his side if she could. Luke explains that not going was a real possibility because there is a good chance he will be killed at the academy, and he had considered staying behind to be with her. However, now that he knows his own home is no longer safe, he feels he has no choice but to move on to protect his leisurely life. He formulates a new plan to help the game's protagonists from the shadows, setting the stage for them to eventually crush his father, the leader of the nobles. He acknowledges that this is the easiest path with the highest chance of survival, but it is a difficult role for a reincarnated person to play. Despite this, his love for the world of the game has not changed, and he refuses to sit back and be killed, deciding instead to fully embrace his role as Luke. 1 year later, Luke arrives at the Alessida's Royal Academy entrance exam grounds. The exam consists of 3 tests: magic, practical skills, and a subject test. He knows that top performers can earn scholarships regardless of their identity, but he plans not to try too hard to avoid standing out. During the practical exam, he hears students talking about a beastman. He looks over and sees a girl with green hair and emerald green eyes, whom he instantly recognizes as adventurer Ruby, one of the game's heroines. Ruby easily defeats her opponent, showcasing the powerful constitution of a beastman combined with unorthodox techniques. The examiner then calls the next name, Luke Hugelo Disgustos. When asked about his magic, he states that it is elementless, which he finds to be a pain. As his practical test begins, he immediately yields. By the time the examiner calls for the next participant, Ruby has already left, humming as she walks away. Luke isn't concerned, thinking he will probably meet her again at school. The next day he receives his letter of acceptance. He had no need to worry about failing, as he knew from the game that his character had excellent grades and exam results. With his acceptance secured, the adult romance strategy simulation finally begins. The story continues as Luke prepares to enroll in the prestigious Alessida's Royal Academy, an institution that stands as the very stage for the game he knows so well. Dressed in his new uniform, Luke admires his own handsome reflection, thinking how good he looks, while his maid Syrup informs him that the carriage is ready to depart. Luke thanks her, feeling the weight of this moment as his new life is about to begin. He thinks about the academy, which is the most historic and high-status school in the kingdom and the place where nearly all noble children are educated. It has also recently begun to accept exceptionally talented commoners as scholarship students. The school's purpose is to train students in combat, magic, and academics to create skilled individuals who can fight back against the monsters that sometimes spill out from the kingdom's many dungeons. The academy also functions as a research facility with a special focus on the advancement of magic, even employing legendary magic users as teachers. Luke reflects on his new plan to survive, deciding to use his knowledge from his past life to support the game's protagonist from the shadows even as he plays the part of a familiar villain. His most important goal is to avoid the original Luke's death, and he knows that future events will now be different since he is no longer the gross, fat Toad from the game. As he ponders this, Syrup looks at him with a worried expression. Luke expresses that he wishes Syrup could come with him to the academy, but he knows it is impossible. The academy allows students to bring retainers, but a rule states the retainer must be within 2 years of age of the student, and Syrup is 7 years older than him. Syrup is still very anxious about Luke being on his own and worries about the new retainer his father has arranged for him. Luke tries to reassure her by saying he can take care of himself and that his fiancée, Karen, will also be there. He thinks about his deep bond with Syrup, who protected him when he was a child and gave him the affection his own family never did, making her feel like his only true family. He understands his departure will be difficult for her, especially since she had taken over all of his care recently. Luke sincerely thanks her and promises to repay her kindness one day, asking her to believe in him and wait, which she tearfully agrees to do. They share a sad embrace, admitting they will miss each other. Luke comforts her by saying he will be back at the end of the year and she must be patient until then, entrusting the house to her care. As he prepares to leave, Luke tells Syrup that when he graduates and leaves his family home, he wants her to come with him. She is shocked, as she had assumed she would be dismissed then, but Luke firmly tells her he has no intention of ever letting her go. In the carriage, he declares that when that time comes, they will become a real family. A blushing and overjoyed Syrup agrees, and Luke lovingly thinks about how cute she is. After waving a final goodbye to her, he departs for the academy to begin his new life. Upon arriving near the dorm registration, Luke expects to meet the retainer his father arranged. A young woman with glasses and a braided ponytail approaches, confirming his identity before introducing herself as Rivera Glico. Luke is surprised to learn she is the daughter of his pen pal, Malsa Glico, the director of the Magic Ministry. He had been wary of a retainer sent by his father, but this connection changes everything. Rivera is thrilled to serve him, explaining that she loves magic and wants to join the Magic Ministry, and she is grateful when Luke encourages her dream. She insists on taking care of him because she is fascinated by his magic, which she calls a form of art. Luke recalls that in the game, Rivera was a magic-obsessed girl who often caused trouble. Rivera suggests they have tea while they wait, eager to discuss magic with him. Over tea, she thanks him for the tea leaves he sends her father and then launches into a brilliant analysis of his original magic, impressing Luke with her deep knowledge. He muses that she is much like her father and thinks that researching magic with her could be interesting. After their tea, they head to the Academy's Great Hall for the main event, the entrance ceremony. Inside the crowded hall, Luke notices some familiar faces from the game. Suddenly, he feels a powerful and hostile stare directed at him. He looks across the hall and sees the game's protagonist, who is glaring at him with intense dislike, and Luke realizes that even though they have never met, the animosity between them has already begun.